Got it. Okay. All right. It says we're live. Anybody who is watching, oh shoot, and Sunman just dropped out. Anybody who's watching this recording, just hang out. It takes a minute for just everything to sort itself. And then I got to put the link to the YouTube in the Telegram channel. All right.
Sunman's back.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry about that, gentlemen. Happy solstice, y'all.
Laser eyes. Bullish on Bitcoin.
Okay, got the YouTube live going, and as always, appreciate help keeping an eye on those YouTube comments if anybody comes through. Welcome, everybody. I am Chris Troutner. This is the Permissionless Software Foundation Technical Steering Committee. Today is December 21st, 2022. It's the solstice. I am joined with these lovely fellows on the screen. Let's go ahead and do a round of introductions. Aaron Sunman, if you're in a good spot to just give a quick intro, why don't you start?
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. This is Aaron Sunman. I'm going to go by Laser Eyes Aaron today. I did finally get my blue check on my Twitter profile, so that happened yesterday. I'm a big fan of permissionless development anyway, so this idea of a permissionless software foundation has been something I've cared about for many years, and so glad I joined and have become a part of it. So I'm glad to be here.
Great intro as usual. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron Shoemaker.
Aaron Shoemaker. I work with the PSF on the metaverse, NFT, digital assets, token side of things. And as we were just discussing, I've got a couple servers that we're going to be using that I'll make sure are online all the time for Stoyan.
Nice. Yeah, appreciate contributing resources to the network. That's very important. Yeah, go ahead, Stoyan, give us a little intro.
My name is Stoyan Zhekov, and I'm helping with maintenance of some of the JavaScript code for the foundation. Thank you.
Nice. And your efforts appreciated. I am, of course, Chris Troutner. I manage fullstack.cash, which is cloud services for businesses who want to build blockchain applications. A lot of the software I run is maintained by myself as well as these other members of the Permissionless Software Foundation. So with that, let me go ahead and share the screen and we'll dive into the agenda. Except now I have Zoom blocking my screen. Okay, there we go. Let me make this a little bigger. So as always, our agenda is on GitHub under the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group in a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee. And we file all of our agendas as issues, so you can always go back and look at our historical agendas. The scope of these meetings covers the cache stack, which is the infrastructure that we build upon, the pay-to-write database, which is a censorship-resistant database, and the dexes. We have several dexes for Bitcoin Cash, eCash, and Avalanche. And then, of course, there's a link to our governance documents, which everyone is welcome to contribute to through pull requests. So as always, guys, jump in and interrupt me as I cover some of our tech updates. I love being interrupted and doing conversations, but otherwise I'll just plow through these things and try and get us to the round table where we're going to talk about the Minting Council and just sort of pick up the conversation where we left off last week. And then Stoyan, I'd love to get a little more input on you from what you've noticed about the Smart BCH bridge and what you find interesting about that. Anything else we want to talk about? So yeah, let me dive into these tech updates. I've been making a lot of updates to PSF BCH wallet, which is our command line wallet for rapid prototyping new ideas. And there's been some new commands that have been added. And what we talked about last week, we all decided was a good idea was, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could have add as many new commands as we want without them actually showing up and clogging up the help command. And I figured out how to do that. Through this process, I actually found out that Oak Cliff, who is the the creator of the software, of the command line software that we depend on, they've made some pretty drastic breaking changes. And so we're kind of, either we need to create a new Oak Cliff project and port everything over to that, or just be comfortable freezing where we're at. And right now I'm just comfortable freezing where we're at. But anyways, I did manage to hack the help. And so now there are config settings where, like, if we create new commands that we don't necessarily want to have in the help confusing new users, we can not show them by default. And then you do a config setting to show these sort of advanced commands. So I continue to think that was a good idea, and I'm pretty happy with the implementation of it. One of the repercussions of this is that when you generate the README, like there's a big chunk of the README that lists all the commands and it's auto-generated. Now it gets a bunch of garbage characters in there. So you have to like manually like search and replace these garbage. It's kind of an irritating thing. And it's one of those things that's like, well, either we can just live with it, or we can start a new Oak Cliff project and port all the old code over to that. And then that would solve that problem. So we might do that in the future. And then prototype indexer for the simple store protocol. So this is something I've been playing with. And in fact, I just did an update in the channel today that you guys might have saw. But the simple store protocol is under our specifications repo as PS6. And what it does is it takes, I think you guys are familiar with this, but I'm just, for anybody else who's watching this, going to recap. It takes a token, specifically a group token, and turns it into a store. And then the idea is like the store might have GPS coordinates, and the mutable data of the token can be used to hold products. And then there is this idea around claims, which is similar to like a memo.cache transaction, where you can publish a transaction to the blockchain with some data about a store, like a product review, or like, you know, this store sucks, or I love this store, or a specific product. That's the idea behind a claim. And so I'm further refining this idea. I'd love to talk about this further if this is interesting to you guys, but otherwise I might just save this for our next meeting when I have a little more code and specifications to share. But that's something that's very much of interest to me. Actually, well, so in experimenting with this simple store protocol and building a prototype indexer, and thinking through it a little deeper, what I'm realizing is like, well, you know, maybe this claim part, maybe I should just pull that part out by itself and integrate it into the PSF SLP indexer as a general thing, so that anybody can make claims about any token, as opposed to just the store idea. Like, I think it would be cool if basically you can leave on-chain comments about any token. So like an NFT, like people can just be like, I like this NFT, or you know, just ways to leave sort of metadata on the chain about a token. There's a lot of different use cases that could use that. So that's sort of where my head's at with that right now. PSF indexer now tracks the address of holders of NFTs. So yeah, let's open up this example. This I think is going to be really valuable, and I'm actually surprised that I didn't do it before. In that the indexer now, so this is group 65, which is NFTs on the SLP protocol. The Genesis data, the data coming straight from the indexer, it now has this NFT holder property. And so it will track the address that is currently holding the NFT. And so if you send this NFT to another address, this field will get updated. And what this allows us to do is very easily use NFTs as a homing beacon. So anybody who is holding an NFT, you can look up that NFT and get the address, and then use that to, say, airdrop them a voting token. Or if you're an artist, you could use this to airdrop gifts to your supporters who bought your NFT
it
token.
can be used also in this naming system that we talk. Now just you get the NFT and you immediately can resolve it to address.
Nice.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
very fast, very efficient.
Yeah, so I started going through this like in a very roundabout way, where it's like, okay, well, I look up the transaction and then I might, and like all these API calls, and I was like, man, this is really a problem for the indexer. Like the indexer should just track this information so that you just look it up. And so that was the big change this week. So good. I'm glad you're thinking about this, Stoyan, and thinking about other ways to use it, because I think this is going to be a really powerful feature that no, it's just not available in other indexers. So that's pretty cool. And then so that leads into some of the commands I've been working on for our governance system. So we've transitioned to a governance NFT, and everybody on this call is an NFT holder. And so we can now, using that new feature that tracks the addresses of NFTs, we can now easily airdrop voting tokens to each of the holders of a governance NFT. So there's a couple of these vote commands that I added to PSF BCH wallet. Wrestling with the Zoom menu right now. Yeah, PSF BCH wallet. I'm going to scroll down to the vote commands. Yeah, so there's these two vote commands. And so vote adders looks up all the addresses holding a governance NFT, and then vote airdrop takes the output of that command and can airdrop a voting token or any token for that matter to the holders of the NFT. So this is going to make our voting process, like, you guys have all gone through the voting process in the past where we did the merit-based calculation and we airdropped the token to the top 50 addresses with merit, the highest merit, and like that was all very manually intense and computationally intense. And so this new process is like so much simpler. It's just going to be two commands to airdrop a voting token, and then you'll see a voting token appear in the wallet that's holding your NFT, and then you can just send that that token to a yes address or a no address or an abstain address. So our whole voting process is going to be very simple. And I'm really excited to have our first vote, which I'm hoping will involve the Minting Council.
Chris, because there's already like many groups, can we like switch on and on, like more like maybe we don't need switching off just the vote, just this or that. Can we just have like simple extended wallet, like something like this one?
Extended like with an HD address or something?
No, extended, maybe complicated, or I don't know, with votes, with IPFS, with all commands, and simple, which is for the everyday use. Like there will be no need maybe from vote, IPFS, and I don't know. So yeah.
I'm not really following what you're asking.
I mean, if you remember our previous talk, we was talking to have some flags in the config so we can switch on and on group of files. But
oh yeah,
can we have like, I don't know, something? It's already too many groups, maybe.
Oh, groups of, yeah. So you're talking about using a config setting to hide some of these commands.
Yeah. Because
yeah. So in the README, every command's displayed, but the vote commands are actually, these won't show up in the normal help. So these are like one of the first commands that I'm using that new config setting for. So like these vote commands, they won't show up unless you turn them on with a config setting. And yeah, I was looking through here, and like maybe the message ones we could hide by default. I'm also hiding the IPFS group commands because most new people aren't going to need those. But then the pay to write database ones are pretty handy, especially anybody who's working with IPFS. The token ones are pretty handy. The wallet ones are pretty handy. And then the send commands are obviously necessary.
Maybe how to see the handy one, just to be enabled by default, but still to have possibility to hide them. Like,
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it will be like
we could do that.
The default config will be handy stuff on. But of course, if people don't want something, they can always switch them by themselves in the config.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely now that these changes have been put in there for the config settings, we can definitely do that. It's a good idea. Okay, so those are the vote commands. So pretty excited to have our first vote. I also created this multi-sig branch, and I published a video going over sort of my research notes here, but and Stoyan, I'd love to get your feedback on this if you have time to look through the code, but these multi-sig wallets are much more restrictive code-wise than a normal wallet. And so there's these, 6 commands. And maybe if I explain this, you guys will understand what I'm talking about with restrictive. And in the video that I published to YouTube, I go through this entire workflow. And basically, anytime you add or remove a person from the multi-sig wallet, it completely changes the wallet. It's like the wallet has a new address. So that's something that kind of like for instance, if this minting baton, one of the ideas is to use the minting council to control a minting baton. So anytime we add or remove someone from the minting council, or we'll have to go through a ceremony that moves the minting baton, or I'm thinking there's probably going to be multiple minting batons from the old wallet into the new wallet, because the new person we add won't be part of the old wallet. So the wallet will have a different address. And so that kind of, just from an administrative standpoint, that's kind of inconvenient. And so, but it's just one of the restrictions when working with multi-sig wallets. Also, this create transaction is a little, like, you have to do like very specific things. Like in this example, I just send 1,000 Satoshis, but I'm starting to realize, like, so basically we're going to need to have a specialized, this command, this create TX command is going to have to get replaced for every specialized thing we do. So like if it's minting new tokens, that'll be one type of transaction. If it's sending an op return, that's a completely that'll have to be a completely different command. So this one command is going to have to grow to like several commands. So, it's trying to keep things simple and is going to be hard. So anyways, I'd love to get your guys' feedback, particularly you, Stoyan, if any of you have time to go through these commands and watch that video and just sort of see the workflow that I go through. And if you guys have any feedback on how we could simplify this process, this is where I'm at right now, and this is why these multi-sig commands are in their own branch, because I don't think I'm going to bring these into the master branch, because this is more of just a research and experimentation. So we need to go from, we need to go from where we are here and then understand the restrictive nature of sort of these multi-sig wallets, and then figure out, okay, what does the workflow for the minting council actually look like? So one of the very first things I want the minting council to do is set the price of a pay to write database right. And of course, if we change, and the way that works is the pay to write database looks at a specific address to retrieve the value that it should use to charge for writes. And so if we are adding people to the minting council, then that address is going to change, which means we need to update the code for the pay to write database, which is all possible, but it's just like it's less of an automatic process than I was hoping to achieve out of the gate. So that's the kind of feedback I'd love to get, is just sort of like, okay, here, what do we need to do? How can we do it? And then how can we make that process a little simpler?
Well, I want to say, first of all, I am fully in favor of all of the multi-sig stuff. The problem is I just don't understand enough to feel like I can really comment well, but I appreciate everything you're doing, because it is not a simple thing. It is a complex thing, and no one's really done this before. So just full support. Just wish I had a better
thanks
comments capability.
Thanks, man. Yeah, the other thing that's making this a little different than other multi-sig approaches in the past is that we're using these NFTs as homing beacons. And this is actually greatly simplifying the process. If we didn't have these NFTs as homing beacons, like it would be a much more manual process. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever done a multi-sig wallet with Electron Cash, but I have. But usually, like, you can't, like, with this process, we can do everything asynchronously, which like is basically using email essentially. Whereas when you create a multi-sig wallet and use a multi-sig wallet in Electron Cash, like, you pretty much have to be on a Zoom meeting with everybody. Like, everybody needs to do their thing at the right time before somebody else can do their thing. And so it's very hard to work with multi-sig wallets in an asynchronous way. And so by using these NFTs as homing beacons, it greatly automates the whole process, and it basically lets us do everything over email, which is really nice.
Yeah, asynchronous.
Yeah, really appreciate that support, Aaron.
It's fantastic.
So yeah, that's the multi-sig research. So that's pretty good. Yeah, pretty. And so, like, I created that video mostly for myself, just so, like, in a few months, if I forget everything, I can give myself a refresher. So, added a couple commands to minimal SLP wallet. These were both fairly overdue, because I think it already actually did these things, but they just weren't in the README, and they weren't quite as prevalent as they should have been. So I'm just scrolling down to the bottom of the README where I added this stuff. So minimal SLP wallet is our JavaScript library. It can be used in a browser or in a Node.js environment in order to create, a wallet with high-level commands. And so there's the broadcast command, which seems like it should have been in there, and it was in there, but it was just kind of hidden, and it wasn't obvious how to interact with it on the README. So I brought it up to the main library. So it's just a simple .broadcast command. You feed it hex, and you can broadcast the transaction to the network. And the other one is this get public key, which is what we use. You use this to send end-to-end encrypted messages, and we're also using this to create multi-sig wallets. And so if you give it a Bitcoin Cash address, as long as that address has made one transaction, then their public key is on the blockchain, and you can just look it up. And so if people are familiar with asymmetric encryption, or if you've ever tried to do encrypted email, you know how big of a pain in the ass it is to, like, you have every person, you have to go be like, hey, what's your public key? And then if their email changes, you have to go through it all over again. You can't just send someone an unencrypted message. You have to get the public key from them before you can do that. So this automates that process, and that's part of what makes this voting and the multi-sig thing much more fluid, is that you can just look up a person's public key on the blockchain, and you don't actually need any interaction with them, as long as they've made one transaction with that address.
Wow, that's cool. I guess I didn't even realize that. It makes sense once you said that about public key encryption. You need the public key, and without it, you can't do that bit. But to make that simple is going to be a big game changer for the ability to do those kind of messaging, encrypted messaging.
Yeah. And what I'm starting to realize is, like, what do they call that? Like the sum is greater than the parts, is that, like, combining this NFT homing beacon thing along with being able to just look up the public key on a blockchain, and then being able to send end-to-end encrypted messages, like, combining all these features is starting to become like a really powerful workflow. Like, each one on themselves is cool, but when you combine them, we're really starting to get, like, business applications that are pragmatic.
We just need voice chat now.
Yeah.
Right.
I heard that there's this program called Zoom for that.
I'm not familiar.
Anyways, okay, so spent the last few days working on documentation, so I'm really excited to share this with you guys. This is the automated market maker. So The DEX is great, but it's really slow and manual and clunky. And so this automated market maker makes everything better. I've been playing with it. What it does is you give it basically you set up the DEX, a DEX seller wallet, and then this automated market maker is just like one extra Docker container that's optional and that you can run separately. And it just has one input, which is this JSON file. So you tell it the token that you want to sell, the quantity you want to sell, the price per token, and then your error. So this would be 5%. So if the price fluctuates by more than 5%, the market maker will destroy the order and recreate it at the new price level as the price of Bitcoin Cash or eCash or Avalanche shifts. So what's cool is like this lets you control your DEX app just through a command line. You actually don't need to mess with a graphical user interface if you're like me and you don't like doing that. But what's also nice is this thing just stays online, makes sure that your orders are always up, and it always responds very quickly to either price changes or orders getting taken. So I'm pretty happy with this, and I just added the documentation here to the BCH DEX on how to set up an automated market maker. So I'm hoping that this. I've talked to a couple people I know who have businesses who also have SLP tokens, trying to encourage them to just let them know like, hey, this exists. If you need any help setting it up, let me know. I'll help you. So I'm hoping to see more tokens get on the DEX. Now that we have this sort of, it's basically automated. I mean, that's the whole point. It's automated. So it just really takes a lot of the manual drudgery out of trying to sell a token on the DEX. And other documentation that I added is to the pay to write database. This has been badly needed for a while. So I did quite a bit of updates on the. So this is at p2wdb.com. So added a config section for the pay to write database because there's a lot of these environment variables because there's a lot of different ways to configure it to talk to like our Web3 cache stack infrastructure. Or if you're running your own local cache stack, you probably don't want to go outside through the IPFS network and back. You just want to run it and have it talk to your local Web2 cache stack. So it shows how to configure that. If you don't run your own cache stack, instead you use fullstack.cache, either our tiered process or our isolated infrastructure process. It shows how to set that up, shows how to configure the ports and how they're used and what ports do what. How to set up native payments, which is lets you pay. It's like because the pay to write database requires PSF tokens to write, but there's this native payments, which is an optional thing you can turn on that lets people pay in Bitcoin Cash or eCash directly rather than having to possess PSF tokens, which is a high source of friction. And then I also added documentation yesterday for the pinning service, the pay to write pinning service. So this is a totally optional add-on, but it turns your pay to write database into an IPFS pinning cluster. And so we've got 2 or 3 of these running right now. And if you're doing work on tokens, you're going to want this because a lot of the token metadata as well as the token icons are pinned with this pinning service. And so by running your own local pinning service, you have direct access to all that data. So yeah, just added, as much documentation around this as I could. And so Aaron Sunman, I'm going to be looking to you as my first guinea pig, really. Like no pressure, like when you're ready, don't make this a priority, but you're one of the first people I think are really going to need this documentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about that. And I'll take all the help I can get.
Nice. Okay, great. So those are the tech updates. So let's move on to the roundtable because I really want to get your guys' feedback, particularly with the Minting Council. So this is continuing the conversation we had in our last meeting. And I put some comments up there in the Telegram channel about, I'm starting to lean towards maybe the members of the Minting Council should not be anonymous. But at the same time, I feel it's important that we are anonymous friendly to members of the governance token. And I really want people to push back on me if for some reason that doesn't sit right with them. And then some of these other questions is, should the governance NFT holders, should like the process of adding new members to the minting council, I'm starting to lean more towards we should actually have a governance vote, and the governance NFT holders should actually elect people to the minting council, which means they're not going to be anonymous. And I also, there's this sort of, I raised in the Telegram channel about geographical location. Like we might want to actually choose people for the meeting council based on their geographic location in order to minimize coercion through state actors, if that's something that we want to take seriously. And then also this idea of like, should the minting council members should this be a paid service? Should we, I'm thinking like a token amount, like $25 in PSF tokens every time we need the minting council to assemble. And because the other thing that's in here that I talked about in the Telegram channel is the minting council is not supposed to have any autonomy. They're not supposed to just like do things on their own. They should really only do things when directed by the governance NFT holders after having a vote. So anyways, so let me open up the floor to that. Do you guys have any thoughts on what I've posted in the Telegram channel, or those questions that I just covered? Don't all start at once.
Well,
But I mean, let's just start with the first one. Like, do we think that it's a good idea for minting council members to be anonymous or not?
I think that was one of the things I commented on in the Telegram group a bit, is like, I do feel like it would be nice if we could be anonymous friendly as much as we can. However, I don't think we're tricking ourselves thinking that that if we're trying to especially be geographically separate, that we actually are we are actually anonymous. I mean, there are state actors that can tell where we're at, and they have access to our IP addresses and stuff like that. So I know, and then there was a lot of other things brought up just in terms of like, well, what if a bunch of other people tried to get on and bought tokens or whatever, and then tried to, veto anything we wanted to do? The risk of actually having to split further. I mean, that's always the nuclear option is always great to have. We don't want it to happen. So having us not be anonymous, I think right now is the right decision. But trying to be as anonymous friendly as possible still is a goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good input. And I should say one of the sources of inspiration that I'm drawing from here is YearnDAO. And they have some great videos and documentation on how on their org chart, and they're big on recognizing that some processes do need to have controls and should not be anonymous, particularly around treasury management. And that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think there will be more trust in this minting console if they have faces, if it's not anonymous. But yeah, choosing like I don't know. So the two choices are like anonymous but can be everywhere, or non-anonymous and carefully choose location. And yeah, the second choice is not so bad, I think.
Yeah, well, you touched on it. I think trust is sort of the weighing factor here. Is like, how could we have anonymous members and trust them? Like, how can we know that they're not a Sybil account? I'm not sure how to achieve that.
It's how to see the things we need to start. So if we think it from the beginning to be perfect, we will just not start. And in the moment, I think like a non-anonymous can start the rolling. And if we have more automated procedures, we can switch slowly to like anonymous. But in the beginning, because of the tools that we still have in the moment to start, it will be pretty difficult to be completely anonymous. So yeah, in order to start the ball rolling, we can start with the stuff that we have now.
Right.
So, and I think in the beginning there's not so much value in these tokens and everything, so it's not so like dangerous and exposed to these state actors. So
there's an interesting thing about it too right now. I mean, I think that it's possible to have anonymous actors that you trust, but it takes a long time. Like Punk 6529.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is, and he's anonymous, but I mean, the guy's got such interesting following, so many great comments. I mean, that I think long term, it can't start this way, but we can still leave that capability of having anonymous and having trustworthy is still something that is not completely out of the question.
Yeah, good points for both of you.
My comment on anonymity would be that yes, if this thing explodes and tokens are value, then there are threats from outside actors. But on the early stages, having no anonymity or limited anonymity provides accountability for the minting council to not go crazy. So I forget who it is, but there was somebody that said when you're starting up, do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where if all of a sudden, you and Stoyan mint a bunch of tokens, I can call you up and be like, what's going on here? Why are you doing this?
Right. Yeah, that doesn't scale. That's a good point.
It doesn't scale to do that at scale, but it does in the beginning. And it just prevents anybody that's on the minting council from doing that, because we can call them out individually as a community and, go, hey, can you explain yourself? What's going on? I'm trying to understand why you just minted 1 billion tokens, and why is, or you weren't instructed to mint. What's happening here? So just being able to do that could help. Whereas if things are completely anonymous, somebody does that, we're like, we don't know if we're being attacked. We don't know if it's somebody from the inside, So I could see that on the startup side of things going, it might be good to know.
Makes sense.
Well, that's great feedback, guys. So it sounds like we're all got a rough consensus here on, at least for now, let's go with non-anonymous minting council users. So in terms of getting people on the minting council, should we essentially, I'm thinking it would probably be a good idea to have a formal process where we have a governance vote, where we airdrop voting tokens to the governance NFT holders to vote new members to the minting council. And to start with, to get the ball rolling, I'm thinking we could just basically have a vote for multiple people at once, just to get them in. So I'm thinking, a rough idea is, I'm thinking Stoyan and Daniel in Venezuela has also offered to be on the minting council. So those are 2 people outside the US. So anyways, once we can discuss who we want to have on the minting council to start with, and then that could be our first governance vote. And then from then on, if we want to add or remove, I guess, NFTs or members from the minting council, then that can be a governance vote that we would, so we would set the precedent that that's how we add new members or remove members from the minting council is through a governance vote. Does that seem too formal to you guys? Does that seem like a good idea?
No,
are there other ideas?
Yeah, it seems sustainable too.
Do you have more candidates than the places in this meeting? Because I think, how to see, president is good, but if there's 2 candidates for the 3 places, it's I don't know, whole voting will just, I don't know.
Well,
so.
Yeah, I mean, we're not necessarily restricted to a number, but of the minting council, but I mean, usually more is better. But there's a fine line there because it gets unwieldy. So I really like 5. I think 5 is a healthy, if we have a 3 of 5, or if you have 6 or 7, but I think sort of that's the target. So I would love to not be on the minting council. Obviously I'm willing to be, but I'm thinking if we got 3 people not in the US, then we could have 2 people in the US. I personally would feel good about that. But I certainly want your guys' opinions on that.
I think you want to go odd, so you always have a deciding vote.
Yeah, well, so the way it works, at least, I mean, this can be changed because it's just code, but I have the sort of assumption I've been moving forward with is that the wallet is sort of, it's a 50% plus 1. So if we have, 5, it's a 3 of 5, and if we have 6, it's a 3, it's a 4 of 6, and if we have 7, it's a 4 of 7, and so the more people we get, it's sort of the easier it gets, because there's just more people, but we also have to get more people. So yeah, I agree though, in general, an odd number is great, is ideal, but it's also not such a big deal if it's not an odd number. Like for voting, like governance voting, like, yeah, it'd be great if we could maintain an odd number, but for this multi-sig, it's not so important to have an odd number, because you're not really voting so much as you're just executing.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, do you have any other candidates outside of the US right now? I mean, I'm glad, there are some right now, because I feel like it is important to have some sort of protection against state actor action. So I'm all for it. I'd love to see more people join us as well, just in general.
Yeah. There's other people in South America that, Feliz is a guy who recently bought a governance NFT. So he's in the VIP room, and he's in Venezuela. There's also PSF friendly people who are in Canada. We can always gift a governance NFT if we think that, there's a particular candidate that we want. And I do like this idea of, members of the minting council or candidates are drawn from the pool of governance NFT holders. Like they need to, like, either we can just, instruct the minting council to create an NFT to give to someone so that they can be on our governance council, or they need to buy one. But I like this idea of sort of the pool of candidates. Like you must have a governance NFT first, one way or another, either earn it or buy it. Just to sort of show, it's like a demonstration of commitment, basically.
But if you remember, there was a requirement these people to be like very technical, educated. So this reducing the number of candidates, I think. And yeah, maybe the only rule can be maybe like more than 50% to be outside of US.
Yeah, I like that. Just I don't know if we need to codify that, but as a general concept, I like that.
Yeah. Or I don't know, not everybody to be in one country or something like this one, because I'm not sure how safe is Japan and until when.
Yeah, exactly. But just taking those steps is a big advantage. So I was thinking just based on the resources we have available us today, I mean, there's Stoyan, there's you, and Daniel said he's willing to do it and he's technically capable, and Feliz also is technically capable, and he lives in a completely different part of Venezuela. And then there's potentially other people I could tap into, who may not be following the PSF very closely, but they do follow me, and they'd be, willing to participate. Well, let's leave that there. I think we've got sort of a rough consensus there to move forward. But one thing I really want to get your guys' input here is I'm starting to lean towards maybe this should be a paid thing, like maybe not a big amount, but a token amount, like $25, or what would that be at 10 cents a token? That'd be like 250 PSF tokens. Like we just make it 250 PSF tokens, or $25 or more, or $50, or whatever we think is appropriate. But I think particularly, if we're leaning on people in Venezuela, they can use every dollar they can get, and it's also a good way for people just to earn PSF tokens if they want to have more governance control. So if we paid out, $25 in PSF tokens at the current price of around 10 cents, that's 250 PSF tokens. So four rounds, they'd be able to buy another governance token. And, if someone was really committed to participating. So I don't know, that's just kind of an idea I'm spitballing. What do you guys think about that?
I think for smaller countries, yeah, that would be really good, for somebody in Venezuela like Daniel.
And it's also going to be a chore, like I think this minting council thing, like it'll be fun the first couple times, but then it's just going to be a chore.
Yeah. The other thing is like having a greater stake in the game. The further, the more people have of these tokens, the more stake they have in the positive outcome that's coming out of this. I think that's just good to have that continue.
Yeah, those were my thoughts as well. Okay, well, that was easy. I mean, that's really the feedback I wanted to get from you guys. That touches on all those questions. I think we've got enough to move forward. So let's continue talking in the VIP room about potential candidates for the minting council. And I think if we can strike a rough consensus as to like the initial members, like probably 5, the initial members for the minting council, then that could be our first vote, where I would airdrop voting tokens and we'd all just confirm that yes or no, that we'll have a proposal that you vote yes or no on. And if it passes, then that'll be enough to actually create the minting council. And I think at least to start with, maybe for the next 6 months, because that would be they meet quarterly, just to update the pay to write price, and then we'll see how that goes for a couple rounds, and then we can move forward after that with having the minting council control the minting baton. I'm excited to go there, but I don't want to back ourselves into a corner, that we don't fully understand. So anyways, those were my thoughts.
Oh, that's great.
Cool. Well, that's what I wanted to cover. Stoyan, I'm anxious to hear more about what you've been looking at with the Smart BCH. I wasn't completely picking up everything from the Telegram channel. I didn't really have time to wade through the code because there's a lot of it in those repositories. But what were you seeing that caught your interest?
If you remember our discussion about the bridge between EVM and some Bitcoin-like blockchains, and we was looking on different solutions. And today, I by accident just like I remembered, oh, there's small BCH, and I wanted to see what's going around, and I saw their repositories, and they have like a lot of the updates recent days, and they had before some project named SHA Gate.
Yeah,
which was like, but I'm not sure that they even made it working. And now they have like version 2 of this thing, but it was not so much about will they make it on Smart BCH or no. It was the way they was doing some interesting stuff with cache script. This catch my attention. They was doing like a BCH side to be some covenants with this cache script, so the people when you transfer from the EVM side, it will create UTXO with some attached code to it. So yeah, only when you send your like private key, you can spend this UTXO, so you can get the token, something like this one.
Yeah, well, so let me see if I can put this together, but I'm going off of secondhand knowledge as opposed to actually looking at the code. But my understanding is like the first SHA gate was like there's big problems with it. So the V2, which does not like exist in production, it's just a theory. But I think but some people have been working pretty hard on it for a while. So yeah, so the covenant is a spending restriction that you can place on money. So I think what it was is you essentially lock up your Bitcoin Cash on the Bitcoin Cash side, and then that releases an equivalent amount of Smart BCH on the Smart BCH side, and then you need to be able to reverse that process and get your Bitcoin Cash back. And I don't know if that was restricted to a particular key holder or if it was more like generalized, like a multi-sig wallet where it's like there's just a pool and money's moving back and forth. And so that's where I'm really ignorant is on those implementation details.
Because and also before I was like bridging for me was like when I imagine it, it was like burning token on the one blockchain and minting them on the other blockchain. But in this case, you need to have minting button, right?
Mhm.
But when I listen to this multichain.org guys, they just have like pools on both sides with tokens. So in the beginning, you just flood these pools with like BCH PCF token and EVM side. So they're like equal. And then the people start converting. So the conversion is really releasing from this pool and in putting new tokens there. It does not mint tokens. So yeah, you don't need Baton for this. You just need to restrict who can pull from this pool. So accordingly to how much he put on the other side. And
yeah, that makes sense.
And
Because
you need to be sure there's always like something in the both pools so they can, they can function. But with this organization, you don't need so complicated burning and creating new tokens. You create it in the beginning, just equal amount on both sides.
right.
And you can just like, balance this stuff.
Yeah, that is unique to Smart BCH in that like they're not really trying to build a bridge like to bring SLP tokens across. They're just trying to do the base currency to the base currency.
Yeah.
And so they're fixed on both sides. But they do control. That was the thing is like the very first version, like this is what's so weird about Smart BCH is like all the Smart BCH is issued and controlled by CoinFlex, which is currently like in legal proceedings. And but the idea is, yeah, that's interesting. Well, just to throw out some more ideas here on bridging, I had asked you in the Telegram channel, like, man, how hard would it be to build a smart contract for that side of the bridge? Well, I started digging into that, and it turns out we don't even need a smart contract. Like I started playing with ethers.js, and at least this is my idea of a bridge. And maybe I should explain the use cases. So there's 3 use cases that I have in mind. One is like, let's say Tether, which does exist on the Bitcoin Cash side as an SLP token, and Tether, which exists on other blockchains as an SLP token. Well, if we could build a bridge, which would be an app like the Token Liquidity app that has a wallet on both blockchains, and that's what I mean by not needing a smart contract, is you really just need a wallet, and you need the ability to detect when that wallet, or you need to generate addresses, and you need to be able to detect when that address has received an ERC20 token. And that's fairly simple. And so if you can do that on the EVM side, then someone can send you Tether. And then if you have a stash of Tether on the BCH side, you can release some Tether. And like, so anybody can do this. You could have multiple bridges, and because nobody controls the Tether token, everybody has to play by the same rules. And so that's one use case. That would be, say, a good way to get, say, Tether, to move value in terms of Tether across blockchains. Another use case is, so that's a use case where you don't control either token on either side. Another use case would be where you control the token issuance on one side. So I'm starting to really like this Yeti Finance on the Avalanche blockchain. They do these over collateralized loans, and you get this YUSD stablecoin, which is backed by Avalanche in the smart contract. And so we can't control that issuance, but if we had, again, on the EVM side, if we had just an ability to generate addresses and detect when those addresses receive these YUSD tokens, we could issue a synthetic stablecoin on the SLP BCH side. And in my thought there, like you'd say, let's say you have $10,000 worth of the stable coin on the Avalanche side. Well, then you could issue 10,000 synthetic tokens on the BCH side, and everything's on chain and transparent, so anybody can audit it or cry foul if the balances, don't equal one another. But then you could issue that would be a way to basically bring a synthetic version of the stablecoin from Avalanche to the BCH blockchain. So that would be one use case. And then of course there's a use case where you control the issuance on both sides, and that's the easiest, because then you're in total control of everything. That could be a business use case for, say, Spice Token, or some company that wants to just have a token on. I've been talking to Stefan Rust over on Nuon, who's creating that stable coin.
I got an NFT from their beta testnet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You've been playing, yeah, so good. You've been playing with their testnet. How was that experience?
I show it in the last meeting to Aaron, if you remember, on our Friday meetings. I created like wallet there and put some collateral there and issued some nuance. Yeah, and I needed to fill some form, and they give me NFT. It was on Polygon, but still. Yeah. So
yeah, so that would be, I've been talking to him like, well, why don't you, since you can basically control the issuance on that Laguna blockchain, you could just create an SLP token on BCH and set up a holding company that just holds, a fixed quantity on both sides to build one of these bridges, and then you could have a synthetic Nuon token on the BCH blockchain or the eCash blockchain or whatever you want to do. So anyways, that's the third use case that I had in mind. But the actual implementation, this is like not a very technical thing, because it really relies more on conventional legal structures, because you'd have like a company with a jurisdiction that would be in charge of these wallet apps. But technically it's fairly simple, because on the EVM side, you just have the ability to generate addresses and detect when those addresses receive ERC20 tokens. And then on the other blockchain, and then you just need that on both sides. And we already have the code for that on the BCH and eCash side. So it would be really easy to build one of these bridges to bring, but it's also token specific. It's not like the Avalanche bridge where you can bring any ERC20 across. It would be like very specific tokens. And then you could build another bridge for other tokens, but each one would be basically its own standalone app.
But we're more interested from one token, right? PSF token.
Yeah.
Because you can trade it for other tokens, maybe on these blockchains. Yeah,
and so part of what else, other than just the technological side of this, I've been exploring, at first I started doing this. I mean, there's the obvious one of this would be a way to get the PSF token on another chain. And that's something that we could explore, particularly if we get a more refined process with the minting council and we get more comfortable with the security that provides, then we really could have the PSF token become more like a medium for moving value across blockchains. And that would be really valuable. And for us as an organization, I would expect that to really bring some cash flow in. But then there's also now doing this in the US is a no-no. You're doing crypto to crypto transfers you're considered a money service business, and you need to register for that. It's regulated, but that's only in the US. And so I've been looking at St. Kitts, okay, well, if we created a corporation in St. Kitts, really this business, or basically the only reason to create a legal entity would be to create a target, like a purpose target. So if anybody takes umbrage with what we're doing, there's a jurisdiction and a mailing address that they can write a nasty letter to. And but really this app's just reacting to on-chain transactions. It's just looking at both blockchains and reacting to events on those blockchains. There's no concept of KYC or a customer. You don't know who are creating these events. You're just reacting to them. And so it's it's silly. I think it's silly to look at that as a money transmission business, but that's apparently how things are shaking out in the US. So the way to get around that is just create basically a legal target in another jurisdiction, so that you can just do what you need to do. And then if some government, probably the US, it doesn't like what you're doing, they have a place to, a thing to sue and a address to write a nasty letter to. And then in that case, you can just dissolve the business and go away. And so I've just kind of been thinking about it from all those different angles. I'm not necessarily saying one is preferable to another, but just thinking through the different use cases and different ways. Because another big problem I've been thinking about is just these stable coins. Like, first of all, how do you pick a stable coin? How do you trust one? And for me, that's over collateralized. And another thing I like about the Yeti contract is they have no ability to freeze the tokens. So they can't mess with your collateral and they can't freeze your tokens. That's part of why it's really caught my eye as a good stablecoin candidate. But then I was thinking, like, how do we bring stable coins to Bitcoin Cash or particularly eCash? But then it's like, the more I thought about that, the more I realized, like, well, that's not necessarily solving the problem. Like, that's a problem, but the real problem is the lack of merchant adoption. Like, even if you have a stable coin on those chains, like, what do you do with it? So I don't know if that's necessarily for us or for me, like, to solve those problems, but I do like this idea of eventually issuing PSF tokens on multiple blockchains, leveraging our ability with the minting council. Once we're actually operating as a real DAO and have time-tested workflows for that, then we could really start to think about, okay, well, let's build these bridges for the PSF token so that people can use our PSF token to move value across blockchains. I really like that idea, but it's also a long-term idea. Yeah. Well, what else is going on? Anything caught your guys' attention in the news?
Yeah, there's so much going on, man.
Yeah.
Because Aaron cut me from my server. I had a lot of time to work on the EVM related stuff.
I'm
So
sorry, Stoyan. You got your server back.
Stuff, by the way, I'm doing something very, very cool. If you want to see it.
Is that can
let's see
you
it.
Show us now? Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be able to share your screen.
So do you know the Knowns project?
I don't
Did
think
you
I
ever
do.
hear about it? Knowns, what the freak? This thing, so this is a generative art project, but what catch my attention, everything is on-chain. All of this data is an on-chain in contract, so it's permanent. There is no IPFS or something. Everything is on-chain, but it's not one image. All of this different stuff is like a different storage, and they're compressed, so very effective. And they also automatically when minting every it's minting every hour or something, and automatically creating auction for this thing so the people can bid, but it's very expensive. You can see here this crazy stuff.
Is that an ETH or what chain is this on?
Yeah, 30 ETH. It's
Okay.
a very old project, and there's these crazy prices there. But what I've done is, and there's a lot of additional services around this, because when you finally update everything to create a new character, it's just a 2 read-only transaction. You're just giving it a seed, what head you want, what glasses, what body, just 5 numbers, and you're saving just these 5 numbers in your NFT. So
okay,
let me codes. Is it still here? So for example, the seats looking like this one. This is just numbers. So the background is 0, this, and based just on these numbers, you're saving this in your NFT.
Mhm.
Based on these numbers, it will give you immediately like SVG file, not file,
Wow.
but data ready to be displayed. So
Right.
it's extremely cool tech. And I
So it's
posted,
okay. So normally these generative art, like they use like a series of numbers, and each number represents like glasses or no glasses, or this haircut or that haircut. And so when you give it these numbers, it generates an SVG. So you can then take that artwork separately from the actual numbers that generated it. That's pretty
yes,
cool.
yes. And it's a 5 or 6 contracts. One is the art contract, which is a storage where there's like 100 heads there, like 20 bodies, like they are saved there. And you have the seed contract, which just creating like random numbers. And you can don't use it this. You can use some off-chain like random number generator. And you're giving this seed to the third contract, descriptor contract, and it's creating the real image.
Mhm.
But the cool stuff is that I uploaded this to Polygon, so I have this art generator now on Polygon. So
You uploaded the contract.
yeah, so you
Okay.
can see the I think here is one just example. This is how easy you can create these images. Just a second. So there is just 2 transactions you send, and they're read only. You don't need to pay for them. It's free, pretty much. So with one transaction, you create a seed, and with other one, you just get the SVG image.
Oh.
So see, here is.
So is the contract itself is generating the SVG image?
Yeah. There's
That's
nothing
interesting.
offline. Everything is online. This is the cool stuff.
That's an interesting use of a contract.
Yeah, and so just let me connect my Polygon wallet. So, and you can, so see, here is the seed, and here is the image. All this just taking 2 transactions to these contracts.
Yeah.
And you can replace the art storage with another one and have another art. But yeah, and see, I can have infinite number of images just with this simple two requests, 2 transactions, and I have already art. So for faucet, I wanted to do this for our faucet with you can send this transaction to the Polygon, but you will get SVG image. So I will just save this in my NFTs. And yeah, I can always generate the image with just simple transaction to Polygon, free
Very
transaction.
cool.
So great, like, I don't know, it's very cool. And I'm happy I have it on Polygon already. I'm experimenting with this like whole week. I generated like 100 and something images. So
Nice.
yeah. And the other one that also I'm doing is this profit splitter. So I have one more contract, the treasury one. If you own one of these NFTs, when somebody buy NFT, it's automatically splitting the whole profit between the NFT owners.
Oh, okay.
And it's also counting how many NFTs you have, so you get like proportional stuff. Also, you can burn this stuff, so you can just buy them and burn them, and this will reduce the number of holders, so it will increase your profit.
Oh, okay.
A lot of way to experiment with getting profits. But
Well, we need Shoemaker to turn off his servers more often so you can keep discovering things like this.
yeah. But I mean, this art generator, it's like, it's blow my mind. It's usually these guys, you cannot have parts it's just one image, but this is just parts. You can replace only the heads, like crazy stuff, and very simple to use and
Mhm.
free. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
this is.
I gotta jump off, guys.
All right. Thanks for your
will-
input, Aaron.
Yep, we'll talk to you guys later. Storian, awesome as always. I'll rewatch the rest of this too. So
Yeah, so this was sorry, I took some time, but yeah, this is all I wanted to show.
I'm getting a lot more out of these show and tells of yours because through the process of sort of trying to answer some of my own questions around these bridge ideas that we talked about earlier, I started playing with Ethers.js, which I'd used in the past. So I just had to refresh my memory with that. And then I'd never used Hardhat before. And so I started using Hardhat. And Hardhat, I mean, I know you know this, Stoyan, but so Hardhat is it's a development environment. It sets up a virtual Ethereum node, and it's a whole development environment for developing and testing your smart contracts before you're deploying them. And then it lets you deploy them. And then Ethers.js is the JavaScript library for writing contracts. That really, I'm appreciating your show and tells a lot more now that I just know these sort of basics of like, okay, I can create a wallet. And I think the next thing I need to start messing around with is Chainlink, using Ethers.js to retrieve data from one of their on-chain APIs or oracles, I guess. That's something that's just a process I've never really fully understood, and I want to get a little more experience with.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. Particularly, so one thing I've never liked about EVMs is that they're not sort of self-sufficient or self-hosting friendly. The blockchains get so bloated so fast. Like, I think, the Avalanche blockchain is at like 670 gigabytes right now. It's not even 2 years old.
Wow.
And
wow. Is that all the chains or just the EVM or the X chain?
It's mostly the C chain. The X chain,
right.
and the P chain don't really put out enough volume. Like,
right.
It's nothing compared to the C chain.
Gotcha.
And so that's almost all C chain. So yeah, I'm starting to, and I don't know if I'm running a pruned node or not. I'm pretty sure at that size I'm not running a pruned node, but who knows? Anyways, like, and they're one of the most compact and efficient EVM chains that I know of. Like, I was just looking at Solana, and I was looking at Solana mostly because there's so much buzz around it, and I don't understand why. And there's nothing I've seen that's really impressed me about that blockchain. And they're using proof of history, proof of something I'd never heard of. And so I was thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't a really efficient way to do an EVM. No, you cannot run that blockchain with a normal computer. You need like 128 gigs of RAM minimum.
Maybe. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, anyways, just to wrap this up, point I'm trying to make is that it's not. So I've always just sort of looked at EVM chains like, man, like what? Like Bitcoin is 14 years old and it's like 270 gigabytes of data. Like, you can comfortably run that on a desktop. That's been that self-sufficiency factor. But I'm also starting to appreciate the fact that, okay, well, EVMs are becoming very ubiquitous. So even if we don't host them, there's value in having these rails to move value around. Like I wouldn't want to hold my wealth on an EVM chain that I can't run my own infrastructure around. But I can certainly still take advantage of these EVM chains to like move value around, as long as I can get that value back to a chain that I trust and is in line with my values, I guess. So that's sort of a head shift that I've been making lately.
But you don't know the Cosmos ecosystem, but they have a great EVMs and Near also. Like the Near EVM chain is named Aurora. It's a single contract on the Near blockchain, just one contract. So and they have like separate shard only for this one. And there's one interesting project, I forgot their names, like Octopus or something, which can create a separate EVM chain just for you. It's creating chains per project. And because Cosmos is very, very effective in the inter-block communication, they have this by default. You just create your EVM chain just for a project, and going through this, you can communicate with everybody pretty much. So there's a lot of interesting solutions there in the Cosmos idea.
Well, I looked at Cosmos because like about a year before Terra and Luna blew up, when it was sort of doing their hockey stick growth, because I believe they were built on Cosmos. They were a side chain, and I one reason I didn't touch that project was because they were, again, like you couldn't just run it on a normal computer. You had to have basically a souped up cloud AWS instance in order to run a block, a node on the chain. And this is part of why I've been looking at Avalanche. Like on the one side, I'm not ready to dive into Avalanche because it's so new and evolving, and I sort of hate like building stuff and then having to go back and rebuild it because something on the underlying thing changed. Like they're not really mature enough for me personally. But the subnet idea of theirs is that, like, assuming that you have to run a validator on the base chain before you can run a validator on a subnet. So as long as they have pruning and you can, and like, so right now I'm hoping that the node, the validator that I am running, which is taking up 670 gigabytes, I'm hoping that's unpruned and I can switch the setting and see what that looks like when it's pruned. Because then if say it only takes like 100 gigabytes to run a pruned node to validate the C chain, then you can run a validator for your own subnet. And then that size of the blockchain that's like an application specific blockchain at that point. So you're only generating the amount of data that you need for your business application. Like we could create a PSF subnet just for PSF transactions, where we use the PSF token as our gas token. And that would be pretty cool. And that might be a way for us to run an EVM chain that we can run, self-sufficiently, that's cheap enough that we can actually just run our own. We can all have just like we're doing with the cash stack. Like that could just be another piece of software we add to the computer. And that would be that'd be a sweet world. Like that would completely change my view on EVM
Dogecoin is
infrastructure.
doing this.
Who's that?
Dogecoin have Doge chain. They're doing exactly this one. You can use Doge to pay. The basic currency is Doge, so you can pay the fees, everything with Dogecoin.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah,
I mean, I guess if you take this idea to an extreme, you end up with Mina, which is a EVM blockchain, and they use zero knowledge proof. So the blockchain is always 29 kilobytes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I couldn't understand how they do this, but
they do it by throwing away all the data. Like that's the thing. It's like you can't. Whatever happened in the past, like nobody has that information. They can just prove that it existed.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking. Okay, if you start from the beginning, you don't have the data, so you cannot recreate this thing.
Yeah,
just keeping the proofs there.
It's like the polar opposite of Bitcoin, which like is a blockchain that retains every piece of data that's ever existed. It's like the polar opposite of that. And so I've been looking, and there's is it Sato? I think it's Sato. That is another it's a circular blockchain. Yeah, it is Sato. And that's a blockchain that, like, say it's like 10,000 blocks long, and it's circular. So once the 10,000th and one block is made, the first block gets thrown out. And so it's a fixed length blockchain. And that's sort of the in-between of these two ideas, where you retain some data, but it sort of ages out unless you pay to retain it. And that was part of what inspired the pay to write database, was that idea. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to do it, and it all just sort of depends on what the use case is, what you're actually trying to achieve through the use of a blockchain. And so I guess my concession there with EVMs is like, well, I don't mind using them. I'm just not going to rely on them because I can't run that infrastructure myself. So that's a personal choice.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we should probably wrap this up. It's been about an hour and 20 minutes. I really value your input, and I'm glad we got to. I really needed to get that input on the Minting Council before I can move forward. Like we're there with the tech, and like I said, we're tech wise, we're totally ready to have our first governance vote. And I'm excited to do that, and I feel like it should be probably the formation of the Minting Council would be a good first vote.
Right.
So I think we're in a good spot to move forward with that. We'll continue to discuss candidates in the VIP channel, and yeah, I'm excited to move forward with that and actually get the Minting Council up and running.
Excellent. Well done.
Cheers. Thank you. Okay, guys. Well, I will see you on Telegram.